In the quirky village of Jolly Junction, there lived a well-meaning but perpetually distracted handyman named Tim. Known for his inventive fixes and hilarious mishaps, Tim was a beloved character whose work was always an adventure. One sunny morning, Mrs. Peabody called Tim over to fix her leaky kitchen sink. Tim arrived with his trusty toolbox and a head full of ideas. As he examined the sink, he got an idea to create a self-fixing plumbing system. With great enthusiasm, Tim began tinkering. Hours passed, and Mrs. Peabody grew curious. She entered the kitchen to find Tim surrounded by pipes, valves, and an assortment of strange gadgets. "Almost done, Mrs. Peabody. Just adding the final touches," Tim declared with a confident smile. With a grand flourish, Tim turned the tap. Instead of a steady stream of water, a geyser erupted from the sink, drenching Tim and Mrs. Peabody. The kitchen turned into a mini water park, with water spraying everywhere. Mrs. Peabody's cat, Mr. Whiskers, darted through the chaos, slipping and sliding on the wet floor. Tim, determined to fix his mistake, frantically twisted valves and tightened bolts. Unfortunately, his efforts only redirected the water to other parts of the house. The living room's radiator began to spout like a fountain, and the bathroom shower turned on by itself. Despite the watery mayhem, Mrs. Peabody couldn't help but laugh. Tim's antics had turned her ordinary day into a comical spectacle. She handed him a towel, and they both shared a good-natured chuckle. Tim, soaked but undeterred, promised to come back the next day with a new plan. "Don't worry, Mrs. Peabody. I'll make sure your house is dry as a bone." The next day, Tim returned with a simpler approach. He fixed the original leak with a basic wrench and some plumber's tape. Mrs. Peabody's sink worked perfectly, and the house returned to normal. Word of Tim's watery adventure spread quickly through Jolly Junction. The townspeople began to call on Tim not just for his handyman skills, but for the entertainment his visits provided. His good-natured spirit and inventive fixes became the talk of the town. One day, Mr. Jenkins, the local baker, asked Tim to repair his old oven. Tim, always up for a challenge, eagerly accepted. He managed to fix the oven but accidentally set the timer to play Yankee Doodle whenever it dinged. Every time a loaf of bread was ready, the bakery was filled with the cheerful tune, much to the delight of Mr. Jenkins' customers. Tim's fixes, though often unconventional, brought a special kind of joy to Jolly Junction. The village embraced his unique style, knowing that with Tim around, life would always be a bit more colorful and a lot more fun, and whenever someone needed a good laugh or a memorable repair, they knew just who to call. Tim the handyman, with his heart of gold and pockets full of surprises, had become the town's favorite source of laughter and light.